In today's video, I am very excited to be updating our winter forecast for now our third update, and it is another really big update, just like the last one was. We've seen data come in and suggest that maybe this is going to be a little bit closer to a weak La Nina, which is the opposite of El Nino, by the way, than we originally anticipated. We originally expected that to be kind of in the center, which is called a neutral ENSO, but now it's dropping a little bit lower. So I do expect, based on what we've seen so far through the fall and what we're seeing in the data, that the La Nina effect is going to take a little bit more of a place in the upcoming winter overall. Before we dive into things, be sure to comment your location down below, like the video, subscribe, and I will be giving you a custom forecast for your location as long as you do all three of those things. Now, there's changes to the snowfall, the temperatures, the precipitation, the overall forecast. Every single thing has been changed throughout this video, so you're going to want to see this update. Let's just dive into it, and we're starting here with the temperatures, and really, the changes are going to come a little bit later on that we're going to be more evident, but we can see this a little bit more south-based along the west coast of the United States. So we're seeing more Oregon and Idaho southward. It's just a small change, but Washington, northern Idaho, and Montana are left out a little bit more here from the above normal temperatures than originally anticipated. Typically, you get a lot of storminess in these weak La Nina setups up there in the northwest, and cloudiness, precipitation as a whole, can bring those temperatures down a little bit. So I think that is going to do its job to kind of subside some of these warmer temperatures that were originally anticipated. I do want to add the second shade here, and that is going to be, again, just for the southwest areas. We're just expanding this a little bit. Now we see southern Oregon kind of into California and Nevada, and then a little bit of Utah and Arizona still getting involved in these a little bit further above normal temperature chances. We even have a third shade for this, the red shade here, for mostly California, but a little bit of Nevada and Arizona as well. Again, very close and tucked to that southwest corner. And this is a pretty big change from our previous update if you were to go ahead and compare. Now, as far as where the below normal temperatures can be expected, we do get this little tail of it now, including a little bit more of Washington, Idaho, Montana, but it's still overall going to be the eastern states. Whenever the west is very warm like we anticipate, that usually steers the cold air right into the eastern states. So when we're talking about a first shade of below average temperatures, which is really where I think there's just a decent chance that that is what we can expect, you're looking at a lot of the central and eastern states overall for that type of impact. For the second shade, we do get a little bit more specific because this is where chances are increasing. So this is where, I'm really having a strong feeling that we're going to have below normal temperatures. And there is a thin band where we remain the lighter blue there on the west. But the biggest detail that is now different is this southeast area now kind of being left out of even the second shade of below normal temperatures. Another thing La Ninas, especially recently, are kind of known for is a southeast ridge. And I think that is becoming a little bit more evident that could be taking place to some extent this upcoming winter. It's played a really strong role in the fall time at times here, and I think that is due in part to, again, that La Nina is beginning to sort of take effect. It's a very weak one, but it is still going to change the impacts to expect, at least a little bit versus what we were originally anticipating. Now, most areas in the central and eastern states are still included in this second shade, so I want to go ahead and move on to the third shade of below normal temperatures, where we see a lot more north-based areas. This is how the pattern has been throughout the fall. We've seen the northern areas be even further below normal as far as temperatures, and the more southern areas, it's been harder to get the cooler air down there when compared to normal. So I want to reiterate that this is the compared to average temperatures for every given location on the map. So if you have the below average temperatures over you, that means whatever is average during the wintertime for you, take that a notch further, even colder, vice versa with the warmth. So this is not to say that the north is just plain going to be colder than the Gulf Coast, because, you could tell me that, right? So that's obvious. We're more so here talking about the compared to normal for every given location, and that's an important clarification. We do have a fourth shade of this where confidence is a bit higher for the northern plains, upper Midwest, Great Lakes. But take note of this upturn on every single color shade. We can see that it is moving down into the central states here, as you can see. And the center of this is more so over the central states. We get this kind of upswing as we move eastward. A little bit of an upswing on every single color shade. And what that should tell you, and what I meant by this, is that a lot of our troughs are going to be, again, centered over the central states, and a little bit of a southeast ridge is going to play a role, and that's why I expect the jet stream to be kind of moving upward through the eastern states. We're going to move into the precipitation in a second, but the effect this could have on the storm track is huge, because if the jet stream, which storms like to follow a lot, are moving upward, that could mean snowy things for areas to the north of that storm track. It could mean very rainy things for areas south of that storm track. And of course, this is just the average for 3 months. It could be down here at times. It could be all the way up here at times. But kind of the center of that jet stream is probably going to be kind of over the southeast at a lot of points, or at least the average of that. So I hope that makes sense. I know it gets complicated sometimes. Here's the precipitation, and when we start to talk about the below average precipitation, we do expect, like I was saying earlier, the southwest area to be a bit drier. A lot of their stormiest season, or a lot of their stormiest winter times, is going to be during El Niños, where the northwest is very, very dry. And then the opposite in La Niñas is going to be like this: drier in the southwest, wetter in the northwest. So there's a very clear difference between El Nino and La Niña out west especially. As we add on our second shade, we could see a lot of the southwest still involved here: southern four corner states, Nevada, California here. And even as we move on to the third shade here, we could see California, Nevada, Arizona still involved. Looking at our next area, the southeast now being involved in some of those below average precipitation areas. And again, a lot of the times the jet stream will be set up way to the north of you, and you might not even get any southern end precipitation from it. And you see a lot more activity set up like this. So this type of effect does take place a lot of the time. Typically, we're missing a lot of the nor'easters that we would see move over the southeast area during La Niñas. So this is all kind of falling into line with our current expectations for, again, that weak La Niña effect. As we take a look at some of the above average precipitation areas, it's mostly going to be along the north, which is, again, classic La Niña stuff, and also somewhat of what we've seen throughout the fall. Recent history, even as recent as like this week on October 16th, can be very, very useful when looking at things like this. Just like the current conditions all around the globe, just like the model guidance, you have to kind of take into account what the pattern has been like. What is the trend? And this is part of that, but it also aligns with some of our data as well for what is upcoming. And whenever you see that kind of grouped together and in agreement, that is a really good sign that you have a strong idea of what to anticipate. So I think from the northwest straight through the north central, and it does dip down a lot for the plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, and then starts to kind of move up on that eastern end, again, just like the jet stream is going to do based on our temperatures. So this is all really congruent here. Looking at the second shade, I do anticipate that a lot of this is going to be for the plains, northern plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and then into the Northeast, which will be a good change. They've been dealing with drier conditions throughout the fall, so it's going to be good for them to get a lot of precipitation. The Northwest, again, we could see that La Nina effect at times. I really do expect that, but I don't think it's going to be like a pure La Nina where it's just storm after storm after storm. I expect more so periods of that, and that's why they're staying in that first shade. But I do lean towards above average precipitation in the Northwest now. We do have a third shade of this as well, and that is going to be, again, for the Midwest, Great Lakes, kind of Northern Plains area here. So they're the coldest and stormiest. I mean, put the math together. That is definitely a recipe for snowfall. Speaking of snowfall, let's just dive into that and where we're expecting the above average snowfall chance, which, in other words, we're using the precipitation, we're using the temperature forecast to come up with an equation for who has the best chance of seeing above or below average snowfall. It would be really tough to try to forecast how far above average that snowfall is going to be, because a snowstorm is a very complex weather system that relies on certain jet stream patterns, certain temperatures, certain precipitation, all kind of lining up into, no pun intended, but the perfect storm. And that's really tough to see a week out, let alone months out. So I try to steer away from that. Just talk about, based on the things we've talked about before, who has the best chance of seeing above average snowfall, because I think that's a particularly tough thing to try to predict in the long range. I hope you guys understand that. Moving into the second shade, I mean, we can see from the northwest through the plains and kind of just eastward, above average chance. The reason why the southeast, this might be a question I get here, the reason why the southeast is still involved in the above average snowfall despite the below average precipitation is for those areas in the deep southeast and southern areas. The biggest thing that you need for snowfall that you have a lack of is going to be the cold temperatures, not the precipitation. The precipitation is not the problem 9 times out of 10. People in Georgia don't say, oh, we didn't get snowfall this year, it just didn't storm enough. They say it wasn't cold enough. So I hope that also makes sense. Another thing I should mention is that, I don't expect the southern tip of Texas or the southern areas of Florida to get snowfall, but whether it's a, area that sees 10 snowstorms a year or it's an area that sees one every 1,000 years, I can still give you, based on the precipitation and temperatures, an idea of if that chance is going to be greater or lesser than usual. So that's why I involve everywhere. Last year taught us, with like New Orleans seeing like a foot of snowfall and stuff, that very unexpected things can happen. And I'm not calling for that, but I just want to talk about the chances versus what is typical. We do have a third shade, and I wanted to kind of indicate this area where we're really seeing rich precipitation. These areas could see snowfall with above average temperatures, some of them. So the precipitation plays a huge role to the north, very much the opposite of the southeast, where 9 times out of 10, it's going to be cold enough for snow a lot of the time during the winter. But if it's very dry, they see a lack of snow. If it's a lot of storms, they see a lot of snow, almost regardless of what kind of temperature pattern there is. We do expect colder temperatures, so that's not going to hurt anything. I expect these areas to have a strong chance of above average snowfall. Finally, our fourth shade for the snowfall here is going to be for similar areas. The interior northeast and mid-Atlantic into the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Midwest area, some of the northern plains as well. This is just kind of a no-brainer for me. And again, who knows if this is going to translate into above average snowfall, or if the timing, the perfect storm doesn't get set up, and it's like, I've heard this story from so many people, it's like it's cold and dry, and then all of a sudden the precipitation comes, but then it's warm. Are we going to see a ton of setups like that? Because if you knew that we were going to have all those ingredients during the winter a lot, you would think above average snowfall, but if they don't come together at the same time, it could still lead to, average amounts. But that's the important thing to remember. Looking at the below average snowfall out west here, this is going to really translate to the precipitation forecast as well here. Below average chance for similar areas to where we expect below average precipitation. We do have a second shade of that, and we do have a third as well, because if there's a huge lack of storms, areas like the Sierra Nevada mountains, again, they're cold enough all the time, but if there's a huge lack of storms, that usually is going to equal a huge lack of snowfall. I hope that makes sense. Let's take a look here at the very exciting overall forecast, though, where we do expect now pretty frequent storms in the northwest. This has changed. We had them kind of in the milder, drier area as of the last update, so that's a huge one. Very warm and dry for the southwest has not changed. For the Rockies, we've gone from average snow to more snow, and I do expect that mostly for like Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and into the Cascades. Whereas Colorado, Utah, especially New Mexico and Arizona, might see a little bit less because they're in the drier area. But again, the northern Rockies are going to be seeing pretty frequent storms. I think that could really equate to more snowfall, pretty obviously. Off to the east, cold and snowy here, just to the east of the Rockies. And that's going to be at times. I don't have enough space to draw everything. That's why I like to talk about it too. But yeah, cold and snowy at times, I think more frequently than normal would be a good guess as well. A polar vortex has a really good chance of developing. We've seen the Arctic really kind of just building energy throughout the fall, a little bit more than what's typical. And I think if we do see these polar vortex or Arctic blasts and outbreaks, I think that's going to lead to especially potent cold air compared to what we're used to. Fairly similar to what we saw at times last year. Frequent cold snow and colder here for a lot of the Midwest, Ohio Valleys, Great Lakes. We see that these areas are expecting cold temperatures. We see that they're expecting above average precipitation. That should line up if everything comes together perfectly, into a lot of snowfall opportunities there, which I'm excited to tell you guys because I know there's been a little bit of a lack over the recent years for these areas. Winter battle zone in the pink. This is going to be an area that will likely see wintry weather at times, especially in the form of like sleet, ice, rain mixed with snow, that type of stuff. It's going to be a battle of the temperatures, kind of to conquer the precipitation type. Like, what precipitation type are we going to get? It's going to be a battle. It's going to be interesting, and we will see what happens. Further to the south, slightly less stormy along the Gulf, into the southeast especially. I think that there's a good chance that this is going to be an area that sees a little bit less activity than what's standard because of that La Nina effect. But I'm not the most confident in that feature. I think the southeast, I feel like they'll have below average precipitation, but I'm still questioning for the Gulf Coast if I want to go fully below average from southwest to southeast, or if I want to kind of cut it off in the middle. Time will tell what I end up doing. Another huge update for this one is the Great Lakes, because I've kind of been not talking about it too much because I wanted to see how things were lining up as we get into the fall. I can tell you that there is a lot of very warm water temperatures in the Great Lakes, where some of them are literally breaking records with warmth. And if you live near there, you know, but if you don't, I'll inform you. The way lake effect snowfall works is very, very cold air moving over highly warm waters compared to that cold air. So the greater that contrast is between the water temperature and that very cold air, the more that effect is going to take place. And with the record warm temperatures in some of the Great Lakes, combined with our prediction for cooler temperatures to be frequenting these areas, it leans me towards, for sure, signs that we could be dealing with above average lake effect snowfall. It could be one of those years, so we'll be watching very closely. It's important to note that some of the analogs I've used, analog years that are kind of good comparisons to this one, is like 2013 and 2014. There was some pretty crazy lake effect stuff going on during those winters, so another thing that kind of just aligns with what we've been thinking. Huge snowstorms going to be possible throughout like the Appalachian Mountain Range. Again, a lot of the time, the jet stream could be dipping down over these areas and kind of rising up through the east, as opposed to kind of doing that offshore. And that could bring really, really huge snowstorms to these areas. But I think that the east needs to be watching out for some big time snowstorms, maybe even blizzards, just because of the temperatures. When we have this level of cold, we have a jet stream that generally is going to be turning up around these areas. Some of that might be offshore. We have a little bit less storms taking this southern storm track, but some of our biggest nor'easters, despite the typical lack of them during La Ninas, some of our biggest blizzards from nor'easters have happened during La Ninas. You think of the December 2010 blizzard up the eastern seaboard was during a really strong La Nina. So these are years that tend to bring these big East Coast snowstorms, and everybody will try to tell you that El Niños is where it's at for these coastal areas with lots of storminess, but usually the warm air is too big of a problem. So I want to put these guys on notice that this might be the year that we get some big East Coast action, especially further northward, which is weird to say, but areas in like North Carolina, Virginia, like I said earlier, New Orleans, they just saw huge snowstorms last year, but it's mostly the guys in the Mid-Atlantic northward that are kind of itching for some bigger time storms, and I think that this might be the year. Now, with all that being said, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day, and I'm fairly confident this will not be the final update. I think that there's at least probably one more in store for you guys, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.